In February 2026, a pastor died in the town of Mongwalu in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. His family gathered for the funeral. They handled his body. They opened his coffin. This is normal. This is what you do when someone you love dies. Within weeks, nearly 50 more people were dead. Nobody knew it yet, but a new Ebola outbreak had begun. And by the time the world noticed, it was already too late to contain it easily. The pastor was never diagnosed, but investigators now believe he was patient zero. The virus that killed him didn't have a name that anyone was looking for. It wasn't Zaire Ebola, the strain the world has spent billions learning to fight. It was something rarer, something we have no vaccine for, something we barely understand. This is the story of the 2026 Bundibugyo Ebola outbreak, the largest outbreak of its kind ever recorded, and it is happening right now in the middle of a war zone while the rest of the world looks the other way. Eastern Congo is one of the most dangerous places on Earth to be a humanitarian worker. More than 100 armed groups operate in the region. The M23 rebel group, backed by Rwanda, controls large parts of North Kivu. The Allied Democratic Forces, an Islamist militia, carries out massacres. Codeco militias attack villages. 2 million people have been displaced. Hundreds of thousands are refugees. This is the landscape the Ebola virus slipped into undetected for at least 3 months. The first case that alerted authorities was a man in Ituri province who began bleeding on April 24th. He died 4 days later. His sibling had already died the day before. By the time samples reached the National Laboratory in Kinshasa, on May 14th, 8 cases were confirmed. But the lab results revealed something nobody expected. It wasn't Zaire Ebola virus. Genomic sequencing identified it as Bundibugyo Ebola virus, a strain so rare it has only caused 2 known outbreaks before, one in Uganda in 2007 and one in DRC in 2012. Here's the problem. Every Ebola vaccine ever approved, every treatment protocol, every monoclonal antibody therapy in existence was designed for Zaire Ebola virus. For Bundibugyo, there is nothing. No licensed vaccine, no specific therapeutic. The WHO explicitly recommended against using the existing Zaire vaccine because there's almost no evidence it provides cross-protection. Doctors are left with supportive care, fluids, oxygen, blood pressure management. The same toolkit they had during the 2014 West African outbreak that killed 11,000 people. On May 17th, the World Health Organization declared it a public health emergency of international concern, the highest alarm the WHO can sound. It was the first PIC since the Mpox emergency ended in 2023. By then, the virus had already crossed into Uganda. Cases appeared in Kampala, the capital. A woman traveled from Ituri to Goma, a city of 2 million people controlled by M23 rebels. The virus was moving faster than the response. Let me put the numbers in perspective. As of mid-June 2026, there are over 1,000 confirmed cases. 256 people are dead. That's a case fatality rate of 26%. But here's what keeps epidemiologists awake at night. Contact tracing is at just 55%. That means nearly half of all contacts of known cases are not being tracked. The true scale of the outbreak is almost certainly larger. How much larger? Nobody knows, because you cannot do contact tracing when armed groups control the roads. You cannot trace contacts when health workers are being attacked at funerals. You cannot contain a virus when 18 infected patients escape a treatment center because a crowd just burned down the tent. The conflict is not background context, it is the central fact of this outbreak. In late May, 20 civilians were massacred by the ADF in Beni. 3 confirmed Ebola patients fled their treatment center in the chaos. In Rwampara, a crowd, convinced a young man had died of typhoid, not Ebola, tried to take his body from a treatment facility. Police fired tear gas. The crowd set 2 treatment tents on fire, burning them to the ground with patients inside. Burial teams have been assaulted. Health workers have been injured. And in Mongwalu, the same town where it all started, 18 patients walked out of a treatment center and disappeared back into the community after locals attacked and burned a tent. This is not negligence. This is what happens when a community that has survived decades of war, displacement, and government neglect is suddenly told by outsiders that a disease they cannot see is killing them, and that they must abandon their burial traditions. the last sacred thing they have, to stop it. When you have seen your neighbors killed by armed men and nobody came to help, why would you trust the people in hazmat suits? There is good news, but it's the kind of good news that makes you realize how bad everything else is. A 16-month-old baby and his mother, Kahindo Mireille Pierrette, both tested positive for Ebola in Ituri. They were treated at the Rwampara Treatment Center, and on June 16th they walked out, recovered, alive. A photograph shows the mother holding her son, both of them wearing expressions that are impossible to describe: relief, exhaustion, disbelief. They are among roughly 100 people who have survived this outbreak. An American missionary doctor who contracted Ebola while treating patients at Nyankunda Hospital was evacuated to Berlin. He received experimental monoclonal antibodies. He survived. His wife and children, who were quarantined, never developed symptoms. Another American doctor exposed while working at Bunia Hospital was flown to Prague. He never got sick. He was discharged on June 10th. Pregnant women in Beni are being invited to stay in a special facility next to the Ebola treatment center a month before their due dates, a practice adapted from a strategy to reduce maternal mortality. Some of these women survived Ebola while pregnant. Their babies survived too. These stories matter, but they are the exceptions. The international response has been a study in dysfunction. The United States, historically the largest funder of global health security, is notably absent. USAID has been dismantled. American health agencies have been gutted. The US has withdrawn from the World Health Organization entirely. The Guardian described the American response as, quote, notably absent. The UK eventually pledged £20 million. The European Union put in €15 million. The US State Department eventually announced $112 million in bilateral aid. But by then the outbreak had been spreading for months. Meanwhile, the WHO is scrambling. CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, has fast-tracked 3 vaccine candidates. Moderna got $50 million to develop a Bundibugyo vaccine. Oxford got $8.6 million. IAVI received $3.2 million. But vaccines take time. Clinical trials are just beginning. The WHO is reactivating its partners' treatment platform to test MBP-134, Maftivimab, and Remdesivir against Bundibugyo in the field. These are promising, but they are not here yet. Here's what you need to understand. The 2014 West African Ebola outbreak killed over 11,000 people. That outbreak was caused by Zaire Ebola virus, the strain we have vaccines for. The global response, though slow, was eventually massive. Billions of dollars, thousands of international health workers, military logistics support. This outbreak is different. The strain is rarer. The location is more dangerous. The global appetite for intervention is lower. The institutions that are supposed to lead the response are weaker than they have been in decades. And it is happening right now. Not in a history book. Not in a documentary about something that ended years ago. As you watch this, there are health workers in Ituri putting on protective equipment in 100-degree heat. There are contact tracers trying to track down people they cannot find because the roads are controlled by militias. There are families burying their dead in secret because they are afraid of the hazmat teams. There are scientists in laboratories racing to test vaccines against a virus that most people have never heard of. The question is not whether this outbreak will get worse before it gets better. It already is getting worse.